Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin, and for the second time with Shannon, too. So, Shannon, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, you're actually the first person that's ever been on for a second part. We've talked with other guests about getting them back on to do like follow-up interviews, kind of based on certain circumstances. But with you, we kind of didn't really get through everything the first time, so it only felt natural just to bring you back a second time.
Absolutely.
So we are on episode 26 now, essentially 25 part 2, I guess we should say. And just to kind of review, when we talked the first time, we met you and you kind of gave us some insights on who you were. And we
Yep.
kind of went through all the negative things that you had been through in your life. You talked about your multiple years spent in a rehabilitation facility with eating disorders. Uh,
Yep.
and then we moved on, progressed, and talked a little bit about high school and how you ended up actually stopping high school and not graduating and ended up getting your GED.
Yep.
Then you got pregnant prior to college. You were in an abusive relationship. So there were so many things that we couldn't, and honestly, looking back, we probably could have covered one of those topics in and of itself for the whole episode.
Probably.
So there's definitely a lot for us to digest there. So now Justin and I kind of want to get into the come up and then the rise, because we saw the fall and now we want to see, like, we covered all the trials and tribulations and we want to kind of get into the triumphs now.
Yeah, you
Yes.
got to bring us back up.
Yes.
I'm going to bring you back up.
All right. So where we last left off was you had gotten pregnant just before enrolling in college. And
My very first semester in college.
okay, so it was yep, that's right. So it was your first semester at college. And
Yes.
we kind of talked a little bit about how you don't really want to look at that as a negative, because it's honestly probably one of the greatest things to ever happen to you.
Yep.
But at surface value, it's kind of a distraction or an inconvenience, I guess, for lack of a better word initially. So
Yep.
pick up right where we left off. So, becoming pregnant, not only as a teenager, but also in your first semester of college, what's going through your mind and where are you mentally at that point?
I was just honestly, when I first found out, I was just terrified more than anything else. I was so young and I didn't know, and I was still in school. I didn't have a career yet, or any real way to support starting a family. And I was terrified if I was going to be a good mom, if I was capable or even ready to be a mom. And honestly, a big part of me, even throughout my pregnancy and even to this day, still worries, in particular because I have girls, about eating disorders. That's always been one of my biggest fears with having kids, is if that's something that was something I don't want them to go through it.
Mm-hmm. And then I think it's just naturally, a kind of commonplace to find yourself worried when you go to college. And there's never, when you talk about having kids, you said, you didn't feel like you were ready for it initially. And to be fair, this is kind of like a discussion that Justin and I have had several times together.
Mm-hmm.
We've met on multiple occasions and talked about how, like with competing, like with me, with bodybuilding, with him, wanting to do his first triathlon and stuff. We talked about how there's never really a right time to start or a
Yep.
good time to start. And it's kind of
You
like,
just got to do it.
yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. And it really is, like, there's no, and there are better times,
Yeah.
probably, but there's no real perfect time. And I think with much, like you guys said, with almost anything in life, I think if you look at it and are waiting for the perfect time, you're probably going to miss out on a lot of opportunities, because there's never going to be that perfect time.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that it's like they like that with several things, like marriage or new job, or probably just that I'm sure you felt that way when we
Weight
talked
loss.
about the story when you moved and your weight loss and everything.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've heard every new parent or parent that's not new now but was new, every parent I've ever talked to basically has said there's never a good time to have a kid, and you're never prepared.
You're never prepared. You can only be so prepared, and most of the time you're still not going to be prepared.
Right. Because often, because my wife and I are currently trying to have children, and we're 30, so we say we waited to get prepared, And I still feel like when I think about it, I'm like, am I really ready though? Like, I was struggling to buy groceries a couple weeks ago. You know what I mean? Like, so it's, I get that feeling for sure.
Yeah.
So how do you then plan not only the mental preparation but the physical preparation? What kind of goes into realizing, okay, I'm going to be in charge of another life? Because it's not something as simple as having a puppy. Like sometimes I think that I wouldn't be even able to take care of a goldfish, and now you're going to try to manage this huge course load, and on top of it, obviously take care of another human.
Yeah. It took me a couple days, maybe even up to a week, to really process the fact that I was actually pregnant. This was really happening, and I was now in charge of another life. And then once I like realized that and accepted it, it was a big push that it, you have to finish school now because you have to have this career in order to raise this other little person who's going to be 100% dependent on me. Like there was no other option in my mind other than I was all in. I was going to stay in school full time. I was going to work part time, and I was going to raise my newborn baby. And that is
Yeah,
exactly what I did.
that's awesome.
So
That's
who
actually, go ahead, Charlie.
I was just going to ask who the helping hands were, because I'm sure that, it takes a village to raise a child, like the old saying goes. So I'm sure that your parents probably had a pretty active role in the upbringing. Who kind of helped out with all of that?
So I was actually about 4.5 hours away from my family at college. So I wasn't like super duper close to them. But they had a huge part in helping. They would come out and help take care of her as often as they could. They were both still working. And on weekends, they would try and come out, like if I had a big test that next week, so that I could really try and focus on studying that whole weekend. They played such a huge part in raising her. Her dad was involved. We lived together, we were engaged, but he wasn't the most helpful person in the world at that time. So my parents were really probably the bigger, even though he was physically there with us, and my parents weren't all the time, my parents definitely, thank God for them, probably really did play a bigger role in helping me with her and helping me manage everything that I had going on.
And
I was
Justin,
gonna,
he
go
firsthand attest to how difficult the coursework is for anybody that's involved in nursing, because his wife does.
Oh man, I just the being around her when she was learning. I feel like I went to nursing school. It was brutal. I feel bad
It's
for all nurses.
it's a lot, because then
Yeah,
on top of that, you also have clinical rotations. So you have to go to the
right.
hospitals and do your clinical rotations to learn that way as well. So, it was a lot, but it was, like I said, I set my mind to it. It was something that I had to do, and I was going to do no matter what, no matter how long it took me, because I needed, that was in my mind, that was something that I needed to do in order to give this little person that was depending on me the best life that I could and that she deserved.
That's awesome.
So then what's the next step? I mean, we go through college. You're obviously currently raising the kid.
Yep.
How many years does it take to become a registered nurse?
I completed it actually in the same amount of time I would have if I didn't have a baby, because I did actually stay full time the entire course, which was about 2 years. And I somehow managed to actually, I was on the dean's list every single semester. I graduated with highest honors. Um, I just had I had great grades. I had, to me, a perfect little girl. And I was just thrilled. And I was so happy that I was able to achieve a goal and something that I had always wanted to do, and that I was going to be able to provide for my child.
So when we graduate college and we have the,
Mhm.
you have this education and you accomplished your goal and stuff, that's super admirable, especially considering, again, the line of work that you're involved in. But at the same time, I feel like when most people think of Shannon, a lot of people that don't know you too well and just know you, especially from social media, know you as a competitor. They don't know
Yep.
Shannon the nurse. They know Shannon, the figure athlete or the bikini athlete who has her pro card and competes on stage. So where did that kind of come about? Because I would think, me personally, looking at your life from a third person perspective, obviously you're highly involved professionally because of nursing, and then
hmm
your growing family as increasing in responsibility now. And then where do you even find time to begin to get into something like training?
So actually, I am a fairly new competitor. Um, I did not start competing until November 2018 was my very first competition, and that was after I had already had a second baby. Um,
Wow.
so now I had two kids and a full-time job, and I was divorced at the time that I decided to start competing as well. So I was a single mom, working full-time with two children. And so, like I had said, in high school, I was a big athlete. Um, fitness is a huge part of my life. Um, it's a great outlet for me, not only physically, but mentally. I feel like when I'm in the gym, like that's the one time that I'm not taking care of everybody else. And it's the one time that I get to take care of myself and do something for myself. So I had known a couple of people who had competed before. And I was like, one day I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to try it. I was like, it was something I wanted to do to get out of my comfort zone. Because I mean, given my history and my body image issues, the last thing I would be comfortable with is getting on stage in a bikini and having somebody judge my body. But I wanted to challenge myself in a new way in the fitness world and get that experience. And I really only planned to compete in that one show and then never compete again because I just wanted to do it to challenge myself. But I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the process. I fell in love with being on stage. It's such an amazing feeling to be up on that stage. Um, and I fell in love with it. And being on that stage made the terrible days where you're suffering and you feel exhausted and just terrible, it made it so worth it. And I am so happy that I did it because it just gave me a whole new love for the bodybuilding and fitness industry that I had never experienced before.
I know so many people that compete and don't like the aspect of competing. They hate the diet, they hate the whole process, but in some
Mhm.
instances, it's almost like people feel some sort of obligation to do it because, hey, I'm in shape, I look good, I might as well just compete because people keep telling me I should, so I'm going to do it anywhere. Whereas I was
Yeah,
never like that. I'm glad that you said that because, obviously the process is rigorous and difficult and, very, very mundane. And it requires a ton of dedication and kind of encompasses your life. But at the same time, like nothing can replace the feeling that you get on stage. Like the
yeah,
actual competition itself is something that like it's completely indescribable. And it's actually hard for me personally to take time off of the gym, or excuse me, off of competing and spending more time in the gym to get better because I mean, Shannon, you know as well as anybody that if you compete too frequently, it
hmm
actually makes you worse and you don't ever progress. So it's actually
yeah,
hard once you get addicted to the stage to say, okay, I can't compete right now. I have to, grow or get better or do whatever I have to do in order to get to that next level and not show the same physique on stage time after time.
right.
You
And
actually,
yeah,
I was just gonna say from a spectator standpoint, you can actually see that, Charlie, on your face when you're on stage, how much you really, really enjoy the stage.
Well, and I think you could even tell backstage, like in talking with people,
Oh yeah.
like when you're backstage at a show, like there's some people that, are very, very intense and driven and focused on the competition. And not that those people don't love it, but they're there for a reason, which is to win. You have
Hmm.
some people that obviously are there to win, but at the same time are very the friendly and kind of outgoing backstage and talk to people because they're enjoying the process. And then there's other people who are just waiting to eat because they're done with this and they're completely mentally and physically exhausted and over it. Sometimes I feel like I'm a blend of all three, but at the same time, at the end of the day, I just like being on stage and being in front of people
Yeah.
and competing.
Yeah, it is really, it's not a feeling that you can explain. And like you said, you can definitely tell the people that love it and that it's their life or their lifestyle, I should say, versus people who, like you said, just feel like obligated to do it. Or I kind of feel like I hate to say this, but I feel like there is like a little bit of a stigma too for bikini in particular. I think I think quite a few young women look at it as like just, well, I'm young and like a cool thing to do, without really understanding the process of it.
Oh,
I
certainly.
think they just think, well, this is just going to be easy, and they don't really understand everything that goes into it.
Well, I have a lot
Um,
of time too where people will say to me, like, hey, I want to compete. And that's awesome. And I wish that everybody who wants to compete gets the opportunity to.
oh yeah,
It's not one of those things where it's just like a couple month process. I mean, it takes a long, long, long time to prepare
it does.
for most
Some
people.
people, for some people, it could take years.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
And I
bodybuilding
think like,
competition are unique in the sense that they it's a sport where you have already done the work on the day of the competition. So other sports, like Justin, I mean, you and I talked about this, about how unique it is because the one time I remember Justin asked me before my show if I was nervous at all. And I said, realistically, no, because when you do like endurance sports like Justin, or you do, team sports like football or basketball or whatever, or even individual sports that are still kind of in the same fitness niche like powerlifting, the day of the
mhm,
competition, you have to do the performance. You have to go out there and do what you're supposed to do. And that's
right,
where the competition comes in. I mean, in bodybuilding and figure and bikini and like physique sports, obviously you still have to go do your routine, but the product is already finished for the most part. Like
right,
your body is what it is. You just have to go show it off now.
yep,
The
yeah, and
actual sport of it is the work, the dedication.
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's
and it's
definitely,
like it's a constant like you versus you, because like you said, you have to take time off to improve, and so, for a lot of people that's the hardest part, is taking that time off to grow and improve so that you can bring a better package the next time you go on stage.
and for people who don't understand the you versus you mentality, because typically, especially for people involved in team sports, it's always you versus someone else, and they kind of coach you to be not you versus you. Like
Hmm.
if my team won, but I scored 10 points, or we lost and I scored 40, I'd rather win and score 10. And they tried to coach you away from not topping your last performance as an individual, but topping your last performance as a team. Whereas in the sports that the three of us are involved in, it's all about being your personal best. And
Hmm.
realistically, it doesn't really matter who shows up on the day of the race or the day of the show or whatever, because like, if I look my all-time best and I come in third place, at the end of the day, I'm happy with that because I improved. But on the other hand, if I show up and I win and I beat everybody, but I was worse than I was last year, well, then it's like, well, I just completely wasted an entire year of training and dieting because I'm worse. So how on
Yeah,
earth can I consider that a win for me?
right, right. And I'm like I said, I think in the previous episode, I'm a very competitive person. That's just my mindset, and it's not necessarily competitive with other people. I mean, yeah, I compete because I want to win. But I'm very competitive with myself and always trying to be better than I was before. My personality isn't, I'm not a stagnant person. I'm not someone who's ever just going to be comfortable in anything in life, whether it's my career, whether it's being a mom, whether it's fitness, even if I'm not competing. I always have some goal where I'm trying to get better and improve, because I just can't, I can't mentally like be stagnant. I always want to be getting better at something, improving at something, working towards something. And sometimes it's hard because I am super hard on myself. And like I said, I'm very competitive with myself, always trying to improve. But at the same time, that's what keeps me going. And that's, I think, part of what plays such a big role in my success and I'm willing to do pretty much whatever it takes. At the end of the day, I know as long as I did 100% and couldn't have given any more, then I'm happy, win or lose. I mean, I'm a little disappointed if I didn't win, but if I know I did everything in my power to be my best and I couldn't have done anything different or anything better, then at the end of the day, I'm proud of the work that I put in.
And that's kind of the place that I've always been in too. Go ahead, Justin.
Sorry. I was going to say that's kind of ironic that you use the word competitive and success in the same like explanation, because I say that all the time, that competition, healthy competition breeds success. If that's competition, like Charlie and I lifting together in the gym, if I'm trying to be stronger than Charlie, well, either way, I'm gonna be successful because I'm trying my hardest. You can compete against yourself, you can compete against other people, but I think if you look at like the world in a whole, and look at all the successful people in business and athletics and life in general, they are definitely overly competitive people.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely overly competitive. And not only that, I think not only does competition breed success, but in all honesty, I think failure breeds success.
Yes.
Depending on your mental state. Because I mean, some people take failure as, well, I'm done, and they don't pick themselves back up. But for me, failure is always one of the biggest opportunities, because I can take that and be like, all right, what can I learn from this? What can I do different to come back better, to come back stronger? So I think failure can be such a huge part of someone's success. And I think, like you said, if you look at anybody who's successful, if you were to look at their history, I guarantee you they failed many times. They just never gave up, and they learned from those failures to continue to be better.
Absolutely. I can't agree with that more. I mean, me and Charlie talk about failure more than we talk about success, because that's more important.
That's where you grow.
Yeah. Is if we talk about failure more than we do success, that means we're worrying about where we're going.
Yep.
And it's hard to blend, I think, for most people to understand, especially in physique for sports, is understanding that there's a fine threshold between never being happy and never being satisfied. Obviously, you never want to be satisfied because that's what keeps you going. But at the end of the day, if you're never happy, then it kind of leads to some mental struggles, which kind of makes me wonder with you, Shannon, was having a very colorful history with the eating disorders. Was that something that you felt helped you in your progression to the stage, or did it hinder you?
I honestly, I don't think it played so much of a factor in the prep itself. For me, the hard part with my history is the transition into off season. For the simple fact that the shreds go away, you see the scale going up. It's mentally challenging. And honestly, I do feel a little bit like once you've been stage lean, you never really feel lean again. um, and I think my body in general just takes a little bit longer than most people's does, I think, to transition. I tend to just hold a lot of water, and my initial weight gain is always in my abdomen. And again, most of it's probably just water weight. But so for me, that's like mentally like so hard. So I just really have to be very conscious when I'm going into off season about being careful and the reversing and really just kind of staying mentally positive because some days are so hard.
And to be fair, I mean, your off season and what you would estimate as being out of shape is definitely shredded for most people's standards. Your stage pictures and even off season pictures, you're just unreal shredded. And actually, it's been so to the point where I've actually contemplated, and this is something that I've wanted to ask you for a while now, is if it was difficult for you to kind of, if there was ever a time where you thought maybe you had to dial back conditioning, given the class that you compete in, and maybe you could give us some insights on like the discernible differences between bikini and figure and how conditioning plays a role in both of those and how what stage ready, how that looks different from class to class, because I'm sure that a lot of our listeners aren't really familiar with that.
Yeah. So there's a pretty big difference between bikini and figure. So in bikini, they are, at least now, over the years, they've started looking for more of a soft appearance. Not as muscular, not as shredded. Not that they're still lean, they still look amazing, but they're not shredded. You can't see striations, you can't see separations in the muscle, you know, and they don't necessarily want vascularity either. That's not a great thing. If you were to look through my Instagram photos, I'm very vascular. It's just is what it is. I can't necessarily change it. I get huge veins through my abs. They get crazy in my shoulders, my biceps. It just is what it is. So when I compete in bikini, I do have to try and not come in as lean and as shredded and as vascular. And I kind of have learned to adjust my posing in a way where I don't look as lean and shredded as I really am. Because depending on how I pose in bikini, you can see separations in my muscles, you can see striations, you can see all my vascularity. And I have been told before in judging that I have come in too lean and too shredded. Sometimes I'm just too muscular and too lean, and that's not what they were looking for. Whereas figure, you do come in significantly more lean and significantly more shredded, but you also need the size. And I'm kind of like, it's hard for me to pick one or the other to compete in because I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. Like my size wise, I'm not necessarily big enough to compete in figure most of the time, unless I take like a long off season and really focus on growing. But for bikini, I can come off too lean and shredded.
So
Yeah,
I got like a
go ahead, Justin.
two-part question. I have like a two-part question.
Yeah.
So one, do you like compete bikini and figure at the same time, like at the same exact show? Can you do both? And two, what does the training look like when you in preparation for a specific show? Like, is it vastly different for bikini versus figure, or is it similar, just like less volume of weight, more cardio, etc.?
So I don't typically compete both figure and bikini at the same show. In fact, most shows don't allow you to do that. You have to pick one or the other, and they don't allow cross competing.
Okay.
However, so I am a bikini pro in the WNBF. I competed in a WNBF show the end of March 2019, a few weeks after, I think when I met Charlie at the Arnold, I was like 3 weeks out from show. And I think he'll remember I had like 8 sweatshirts on at a time. But
yeah, very vividly.
Anyway, so I actually was competing figure in that show. It was my very first time competing figure. And I was getting my hair and makeup done the morning of the show, so probably like 2 hours before the show was about to start. And the promoter of the show happened to come in, and he was talking to one of the other girls. And I don't remember what I heard him say, but I heard him say something about cross competing. And I was like, well, wait a second. I was like, I didn't know you could do both figure and bikini at the same show. And he was like, yeah, he's like, you can do that. And I was like, well, is it too late to sign up so that I can do bikini? And he was like, no, that's fine. He's like, I'll put your name down. I'll let the judges know. Now, yeah, so the bikini suits and the figure suits are actually completely different suits. The cut of the back and the way it connects in the back. And I did not have a bikini suit with me. I only had my figure suit. So when it was time to compete in the bikini division, we actually just adjusted my figure suit and made it look as much like a bikini suit as we possibly could. And I won bikini and I won my pro card at that show. I took second in figure. I lost. I was real close to winning my pro card in both, but it's all right. But so I actually wasn't even supposed to compete in bikini. And I didn't even have a bikini suit with me when I won my pro card.
That's crazy, because that's crazy.
Yeah, so it was still like, I remember that day so vividly, and it was just like one of the best days of my life. But the prep for both of them, for me, honestly, they weren't all that different. You really just adjust your protocols for both your macros and your nutrition, as well as your training. Not so much your lifting, but your cardio will get adjusted to more or less depending on what your check-in photos look like. And for me, they were both really relatively the same. I competed at the Arnold just this year. And actually I had switched coaches for that prep. And that prep itself, being with different coaches, was actually significantly different for me than it had been in my other competitions. But in a very positive way. I had a much better experience prepping for the Arnold than I did for any of my other shows. I actually really, for the most part, through the entire time, my prep felt great. Whereas other preps for my previous shows, quite frankly, I felt like garbage, especially at the end, especially during peak week. I had told Charlie this before. I actually cried on the stair climber once. I was just, and people probably thought I was crazy, but I was so exhausted and just physically and mentally drained. And I wanted to be doing anything else in the world than be on that stair climber.
Anybody who's been through any type of physique prep or sports prep where you're gearing for a competition of that magnitude, is very, very familiar with that feeling. And I feel like the only word that I can think of to describe the whole journey that you've had thus far, there's so much irony involved in it, because like Justin, you and I have mentioned in previous episodes about when you went on your fitness journey, how you kind of wanted to be the exact opposite of what you were.
Absolutely, yeah.
So being someone who was overweight and, sedentary and ate a lot of food, you wanted to diet and get in shape, but then the ultimate goal was to be, you know, an Ironman or a triathlete or someone who is, you know, the most physically fit people on planet Earth. And see, I
Yeah.
kind of see that in the same sense with you, Shannon, how you go from someone who had eating disorders, you know, and then eventually progress to the point where you're a physique athlete. And like you said, you know, constantly being worried about your body, what it looks like, and being judged by other people. And then now you've gotten to the point where you're literally being judged on a professional stage.
Right.
That's one of the things that I've been thinking, like everything at Shannon, everything that you say, the polarity and the polar oppositeness of our stories is so close. Like it's like a polar opposite where didn't like to eat, and that's all I wanted to do. We both had an addiction to something with food, and now both are addicted to fitness. And
Yeah.
it's strange, but it's pretty cool. I'm like literally, like, I have been sitting here on the edge of my seat, just listening and listening and listening. I don't say a whole lot because I'm like, I just want to keep hearing. Like, tell me the next story.
Yeah. Well, I'm so happy. I love to like that. I think that's one of my favorite things is that so many people can relate to a lot of the stuff that I've been through, even if it's not in the exact same way. Like you said, yours isn't exactly like mine, but it's still like such a similar journey and similar feelings. And I want to be someone that people can relate to. And as far as the fitness goes, I want to be someone who inspires and motivates people just by the lifestyle that I lead. I don't feel like I need to, you know those people in the gym that like outwardly are like, oh, like look at me and you should do this and you should do that. Like I just want people to look at me and be like, wow, I want to figure out what she does, or she inspires me to push just a little bit harder, or and I've had a lot of people come up and say that, and that's one of my absolute favorite things is to know that I'm inspiring and motivating people to get healthy or to push a little harder, or just like little tiny wins. It doesn't matter what it is. That makes me happy to know that I'm helping change somebody's life. That's part of what I love about fitness, is that you can help change somebody's life for the positive and help make them healthier or help them reach a goal that they want to get to.
That's it. I agree, and 150%. Like the ability to the things that we do and help people with what we do and what we love to do, it's amazing. Like just and to get that I like what you were saying there, where like there's some people at the gym that just do because they want somebody to look at them, and then there's the other people at the gym that just get it in and everybody's watching.
Yeah.
Like it's all, because to me it's all about hard work. You know what I mean? Like if you're willing to put in the hard work, you're going to have success. And the people that really need to see the people that are actually working hard, and those are the ones they gravitate to, not the ones that are outwardly seeking that help, that attention.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that raises a really good talking point. And I'm glad that you two, made that connection, because that was one of the things initially when Justin and I set out to do this podcast, is we wanted to have extraordinary guests that are still ordinary people at the core. And I think that's why it's so important, Shannon, to share your backstory, because at face value, I think that, and I mean this as nothing but a compliment, but at face value, you may seem as someone who's very unrelatable, because it's like, if I just look at, Shannon's social media, I think, well, here's, this single mom who still has fun, or still finds time to, obviously be a nurse, which in and of itself seems like a task that most people couldn't undergo. And then you're a professional athlete and you own your own business, which we're going to get to here in a couple minutes. And it's like, you see all these successes, and it's like, when we bring you on, I and Justin, we want to make sure that and we want people to understand how relatable you are, and that this isn't actually like some story that's you've been gifted this and we're just so beyond blessed, in your past to have, fallen into success, in every aspect of life. You've actually willed yourself into these successes, and you've come from a lot of issues and struggles.
Yeah. And, as a mom, for me, or just even as a person that wants to be relatable, but as a mom in particular is the way that I think of it. I want people to know, and I want my kids to know that you really are capable of absolutely anything that you want to do. You just have to work for it. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of sacrifice. And whether that's being an athlete, whether that's your career, whether that's your family, you can have really pretty much anything you want in life, and you can achieve pretty much any goal that you set out to. It might not be a super fast process. It's going to take time. But if you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to make those sacrifices, then you can do absolutely anything that you want. And unfortunately, I think people just get impatient, or they aren't willing to sacrifice the things that they want now for the things that they want in the future. And that's just the world that we live in, is people want that instant satisfaction, and they want what they want now, and they can't put it aside enough to be willing to sacrifice the comfort now for the long term.
Find that discipline.
Yes, it's all about discipline, because in fitness in particular, you're going to have days that you feel super motivated, but on the days that you're not motivated, those are the days to me that count the most. And that's where you have to rely on your discipline to still go and get it done.
Yep. Those are the days that mean the most.
Yep.
So
And
let's
at the end of the day, you feel so much better.
Yeah, you definitely do. Let's continue with the theme of irony here. And, we've touched on it the first episode and just briefly mentioned it in passing a few moments ago. Let's talk about how someone with an eating disorder then goes on to be the founder and owner of, a small business where you literally are making baked goods for people. So I don't know much about this, because in my estimation, it's a pretty new endeavor, because I just found out about it not too long ago, and I started seeing things that you had posted on social media. So you kind of enlightened Justin and I a little bit about how this started. Can you kind of take us back and start from the top for all of our listeners on where Beast Mode Baking came from?
Of course. So I've always had a huge sweet tooth. I love desserts. But I really got into baking when my oldest daughter started kindergarten. I was homeroom mom and in charge of all these parties, and I really wanted to be able to bake really good stuff to send with her for birthdays, parties, whatnot. So I actually taught myself how to bake. I spent a long time perfecting cookie recipes and brownie recipes and things like that, so the way that I liked them and that I was happy with them. And so I just love baking. I love the creativity that comes with it, of creating new things and trying new flavors. And so that's kind of how it came along. And I always, anytime I sent stuff into school or I brought stuff to any gathering, whether it was a family, friends, what have you, I always got such great reviews back on my baking. And that's kind of how it all got started. It's just something that I kind of love. I found it to be a stress relief. And it's just something I enjoy. So I figured, why not just go for it? So I currently bake and I ship throughout the US. You can customize on the website. I have a particular thing that you want. Or I also do mystery boxes sometimes, or I'll do pop-up where I'll throw a menu out and you can purchase whatever flavors you want off of that menu. But I really just did it initially because I wanted to be a good homeroom mom.
And then lo and behold, now you're a small business owner. One thing
Yes.
it's kind of comparable to how you said you only wanted to compete one time, and then lo and behold, now you're a pro.
Yes. And I love getting all the feedback from people who have bought from me about how much they love it. And, some people have said, that they're cookie or brownie connoisseurs and they've tried, there's a lot of options out there now, as far as that goes, and a lot of really great small businesses out there that are doing the same thing that I do. And it makes me really happy when I get such great feedback of people saying that they're the best thing that they've ever had, that they're better than any other of these companies that they've bought from in the past. I get a lot of repeat customers, which I think says a lot. So, considering I just started it, it's going well and I'm loving it. And people that are buying are loving it.
So I got to tell
I
you,
feel like this is a social media plug. Everybody, take a second from your diet and go to Beast Mode Bakery.
and that's
Yes, go
something I was
right to
just
my
going to say.
Instagram page even, and you can see a lot of the stuff that I've baked.
So we're going to do
Just your refeed.
What's that?
Sorry, I said just your refeed meal, but go to Beast Mode Bakery.
Yes, definitely. They're great cheat meals. They're great like celebrations if you wanted to bring something now that the summer months are coming up, to once you can have social gatherings again, of course, to barbecues or something like that, post-competition treats. They do freeze super well for up to 6 months in your freezer if you put them in a freezer bag, so you can always take them out and rethaw. It's not like you have to eat them all at once.
Awesome.
All
Sorry,
right.
I interrupted you, Charlie. What'd you have?
Well, I just wanted to kind of, you guys kind of already said what I was going to say about the free social media plugs, because we're going to actually get into all that in a minute here, before we close up shop. So every time we end an episode with one of our guests, Shannon, we always go over this spiel about how this is definitely a fitness podcast. But we try to find people who are successful in all areas of life, which you have certainly done that, both in education, both, professionally and fitness wise, and then, now into entrepreneurship as well. We kind of try to bring things back full circle to our title, because our title is the Chasing Dreams podcast. And so we want to make sure that we kind of stay true to our roots and to our themes. And Justin and I originally, when we kind of formulated this idea, which I have to give him credit for because this podcast was kind of his brainchild at the start, we kind of came up with some values and like basically a mission statement on what we tried to accomplish with this podcast. So that way we weren't kind of spinning on our wheels and trying to find a direction. And at the end of every guest or episode where we interview one of our guests, we always ask them a question that kind of goes back to dealing with chasing dreams. And they're kind of loaded questions that are kind of strung together, and it'll really make your mind think for a while. But Justin always asks those at the end of every episode, again, to try to bring things full circle back to the theme of our podcast and like the heart and soul of things. So Justin, do you have those questions ready for Shannon?
I do.
All
All
right.
right. So, like he said, it's a complex, loaded question. So good luck.
All right.
No pressure.
No pressure.
What does the phrase "chasing dreams" mean to you? And do you feel as though you've chased your dreams thus far? And how do you continue to chase your dreams and help others do so?
So to me, chasing your dreams is really just going for whatever in life is going to make you happy. At the end of the day, you don't know how many days you have here, and you might as well spend them doing something that makes you happy, not necessarily chasing money, like some people do, but really just chase the dream of what makes you happy in life, what you feel most fulfilled doing. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to make you the happiest and make you feel like your life was a success and like you're living for a purpose. And I do feel like I've chased my dreams so far. Absolutely. I've between competing and graduating college and being a nurse and being a mom and starting up my business, I do think thus far I've chased my dreams, but I'm definitely not done yet. There's going to be big things that I plan to do still over my life in both the fitness industry and baking, as a mom and in my career. Like I said earlier in the show, I'm not a stagnant person. I am someone who's kind of never really satisfied, because I always want to be better. I want to keep progressing in life, and in all aspects of my life. So for me, chasing my dreams is never going to stop. I'm always going to have something that I'm chasing after.
And I think that your story is inspiring enough because it goes through so many different aspects of life. Like we mentioned before, it goes through, it's relatable to college students. It's relatable to young single mothers. It's relatable to people who have aspirations to compete. It's relatable to people who want to start their own business. I think you've accomplished so much in so many different realms and realistically in such a short period of time that I think that people can naturally gravitate towards your message and find you pretty relatable because you have so many different avenues of success. It's not like you're just successful in one particular area, and it would be difficult to relate to if the only type of thing that you were into was competition and I wasn't a physique competitor. So you and I don't have anything in common, where I feel like there's so many different avenues that you have as far as commonalities with other people that they definitely make you someone that they could look up to for guidance.
Yeah. And, I said this at the end of the last show. Anybody that ever wants to reach out to me for any reason, whether it's to ask me a question or get an opinion, like anybody can always feel free to reach out to me, at absolutely any time.
Well, that sounds like a great place for a social media plug. So let's give all your information so that way people can contact you. I believe we did it last episode, but I just want
Yep.
to clarify websites and social media platforms and all that so people can look you up and get to know more about you or ask you questions if they have any, because I know you're very open-ended on that end.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm an open book, so anybody can feel free to ask me anything. So my Instagram account is sknorr, which is Sknorr. And you can actually get the link to Beast Mode Baking right from my account on there. And on Facebook, it's just my name, Shannon Knorr, Knorr.
All right. Excellent. And then, like you said, the link is in the bio there. So you
Yeah,
can have access to all that just through her Instagram. And I will continue to post things in regards to you, Shannon, so people who see my social media platform can kind of network with you as well there.
absolutely. I mean, I would love that.
Well, I think that kind of wraps up everything. I mean, that's a load of an interview kind of separated into two separate interviews. But
Yes.
Justin, definitely one of the more intriguing guests we've had on here.
Absolutely. She's
Well, I really appreciate you having me.
Well, with that, we have come to the end of another episode of the Chasing Dreams podcast. So for Shannon and Justin, I am Charlie, and we will catch you guys next week.